Okay, so I'm hoping that I am now live. Oh, hello. Okay, so I'm hoping that I am now live. Right, okay, so I know this is working now because I'm watching it on my phone. So I'm just going to turn the volume down. And hi, everybody. I'm sorry for the rubbishness. I am here. Here I am. And I've got loads of stuff to talk to you about tonight, and I've got loads of questions to answer. And yeah, just huge apologies if you hear sort of scuffling and all that type of stuff, because it's the first time I've done anything like this. And I set one video off going, and then it wasn't the right one. So anyway, I'm here. Hurrah, and happy Sunday to everybody. And yeah, so that's all good. Okay, so this is going to be something that I do on a regular basis every month, hopefully, and start to answer some of your questions. If you want to add some chats, let me just add the chat bit in here. I think you can add chats. I think you've got to include at Bonnie Snowden Fine Art. I think if it doesn't work, we'll sort something out. But you know, if you've got any sort of like pressing questions or anything like that afterwards, and you can't kind of get through to me on this, if it doesn't work properly, then just make a note of it, and then I can answer them afterwards. So basically, what I want to do is I want to I've kind of linked quite a few of the questions together. And I'm going to go through them one by one. I'm going to try and get through all of them. Any that I can't get through, I will sort of push over onto next month. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk about the tools that I use. So basically, pencils is the major one. So I've got a lot of pencils that I use, and I'm just going to sort of bring a load of them out just so that we can have a look. So yeah, so let's start with the Lightfast. So the Lightfast, I received this morning, which was pretty nice actually, because it was a Sunday, and I hadn't expected to receive it until tomorrow. So, and as you can see, I've already taken out a few of these gorgeous colours and started using them today. So the Lightfast are pencils that I want to use more of. They have some absolutely amazing colours. Just put those over like that. You can see I've taken out all of these. These are actually all of the greys that I've been working on today. So you've got we've got all sorts of greys here. There's Moonstone, which is sort of like it's more like a coldy grey. There's fossil grey, there's warm grey, there's platinum, there's granite. I love my greys. I use greys so much in my drawings. I know that there are people like the lovely Kathy that doesn't like greys at all, but I really do like greys, and I find they're wonderful for on white fur, on drawing over the top of black fur. So I've just done a black and white dog. I've used the black as a base, and then I've used I think it was the Moonstone over the top to get sort of like all of the highlights and everything worked beautifully. So Lightfast pencils are quite they're expensive, and I know they're expensive, but they are absolutely gorgeous. The way that they're laid down on the paper, they're really soft. They layer and blend really nicely, both on sort of smooth paper and on the pastel mat. So yeah, I really like the Lightfast. And I'll be using them more and more, I think. And we've got another 28 colours coming as well. So the Lightfast are pencils that I use a lot. Next up we have, let's just move those over there. Next up we have the wonderful Pablos. So Pablo's come in a range of the 120. So I always get confused as to what's wax and oil based on. I know I should know exactly what it is and what have you, but I think all pencils have an element of wax and oil in them. I believe the Pablos have more oil in them than wax, but I might be completely and utterly wrong. I'm not particularly technical. The gorgeous thing about the Pablos is the colour range that you get on them, and they have the most amazing colours. They really, really are beautiful. And I know some of my patron members really, really love the Pablos. So as you can see there, you know, there's just some absolutely fabulous colours. I've already pinched the light grey out of this bit here as we were doing black fur yesterday. Really super colours. Light fast ratings. They actually have their light fast ratings on the barrel of the pencil. So let's just have a quick look here. So the Caran d'Ache, they tend to use the star rating. Let's see if I can get those on. You can't really see. You've basically got little stars. So there's a 2-star, there's a 3-star. The higher the star, I think the highest star on the Pablo is a 3-star. Highest star is the best light fast rating. And if there's one with a 1, which is likely to be sort of like the pinky coloured ones. Oh, that's got 2. Oh, that's got 3. Oh, that's pretty good. They're normally sort of like the pinky oh, there we go, that's just got 1, that one. So this pencil probably you know, don't use that on its own. Maybe, you know, incorporate it in layers, because that hasn't got the highest of light fast ratings. The light fast pencils, they also have their ratings on the barrel, and they've got I think they go with a light fast 1 or a light fast 2, and they're on the ASTM something or other light fast scale, and basically the one of the 2 is that's the best you can get, really. So yeah, so the Pablos are gorgeous. The Pablos, they're very velvety, I think, when you're using them on paper. They lay down, actually on pastel mat, they are really lovely, and they lay down really, really nice and smoothly. Some of the colours that I would recommend if you were just going to buy the odd ones, I would definitely get the cocoa. This is a really, really beautiful grey, but it's like this sounds really stupid. It's just like a cup of cocoa. It's probably why they called it cocoa. But anyway, it's a really, really lovely warm browny grey. And if you've got some gorgeous sort of warm blacks or sort of like darker warm browns and stuff like that in the fur, using the cocoa works really, really well. So what else have we got? Yeah, so and I'll do a little bit of testing as well in a minute, so you can kind of see how they compare and they work together. So those are the Pablos. Okay, let's just pop those on one side. Then we have the Studios, which are my favourites, actually. So the Studios are made by Derwent. Again, I've pulled most of the browns out of here, and it is the browns of this range that are absolutely fantastic. So the brown ochre, there's the raw umber, this one. I tend to use that, I think, more than any other pencil that I've got. It is superb. It's sort of like I don't know, I can use it for creams, I can use it for browns, I can use it in white fur. It's quite soft when you lay it down as well, whereas some of the other colors can, and this is across the board of all the pencils, the different pigments can lay down differently, even with the same manufacturer of pencils, can lay down differently on your paper. But the browns in this range really, really are beautiful. You know, for animal fur, I don't think you can get any better. So there's the Studios, and then we've got the Artists pencils, which I'll just bring those out here. So the Artists are these ones here. And I've just got, I don't have a full set of these. I've just got a few of the actual colours that I use. Now, really weirdly, and I don't really understand why, the core of these pencils is identical to the core of these pencils. So they are basically exactly the same pencil, but the Studios have a finer core. So the lead, if you like, the core, if you like, is narrower, and the Artists are fatter. The Artists ones are round, and the Studio ones are hexagonal. So I'm not quite sure what Derwent's thinking was, you know, in sort of bringing those two out. But they're the same colour, they're the same. That's just Slipper having a wander around. They're the same colours, they're the same core, but the Artists are slightly thicker. So, you know, I suppose if you've got sort of like a large area to you know, to colour, then the Artist ones maybe are a little bit better to use. I don't know. Or you might prefer to use a round barrel other than a hexagonal one. You know, and that's just like a personal thing, really. So those are the Studios. Now, what you'll find is when you start talking about Studios, you will find that a lot of people will start to question the light fastness of them. And what I would recommend is, and actually I'm going to save all of the colour charts to Patreon in sort of like a little filing area somewhere. What you'll find when you look at the colour charts, you'll get the light fastness on there. And the browns, the ones that I predominantly use, are all good light fast or excellent light fast. I think the only one that is poor is Burnt Sienna, which is this one. That one I think is a 4 compared to some of the other browns, which are an 8. I don't tend to use the sort of like the purpley colours, which are really not great light fastness at all. But I think it's a little bit subjective anyway, the light fastness, because, you know, it could be that you know, you incorporate your pencils into lots of layers, and then, you know, these tests are done on just sort of like a one color rather than it being layered, and, you know, so I just think, you know, use what you want to use. Be aware that something that's a poor light fast maybe isn't going to last as long as something that's a really good light fast. Always use good quality paper, always use archival paper, and where you can, use UV protected glass. You know, and I think if you do all of those things, then, you know, that's gonna really help you, you know, keep your pencils looking sort of nicer for longer. Okay, so then we have the I think this is probably these are probably the pencils that most people use, the Faber-Castell Polychromos. So this is a set of 120. Again, I've taken out half of them. They're all in jars scattered around my studio. I think these pencils are the ones that people tend to go to. They've got a really great range of colours. They work beautifully on smooth paper, on pastel mat, on you know, on anything. The quality is really good. They blend beautifully, they layer beautifully, and they work really nicely with other pencils as well. So they're yes, they're expensive, but they're reasonably priced compared to you know, some of the other manufacturers' pencils. I would say if you're starting out and you wanted a good quality pencil, I don't think you can do any better really at that point, you know, when you're first starting out in getting a set of the Polychromos. They're just a really good workhorse. They're oil-based. Like I said, they're good quality. I haven't really had any issues with you know, sharpening issues or anything like that. You can buy them separately, and they're not so expensive to buy them separately, you know, so you can buy a range of them. You know, I mean, there'll be quite a few in here that I wouldn't ever touch just because of the subjects that I draw. But the Polychromos are, you know, they're just a really good quality pencil. So the other ones that I've got, let's just bring these along here, and I don't have full sets of, are the Luminance. Now, some people absolutely swear by the Luminance pencils, and to be honest, there are a few colours that I adore. So there's the oh no, that's a Lightfast. Well, I keep on getting the Lightfast and the Luminance mixed up. There's some of the purples in the Luminance range are beautiful, and the other thing that's really lovely about the Luminance range is that you'll get sort of like 100% of a colour, and then Luminance will give you a 50% and a 10% or a 20% of that colour, which is really, really useful actually. You know, in sort of like if you're wanting to have shades of sort of a similar colour. I don't use Luminance that often. I tend to choose my pencils because of how they feel on the paper rather than an actual colour. But with the Luminance, there are a couple of colours that I would choose because of their colour. So there's the pink one here, and there's, where's that orangey one? That's there, look. So there's the apricot, which I find really, really useful, together with the Pablo apricot as well, actually. But the apricot, I've just used this in a dog's ears. There was a bit of light shining through a dog's ears. This worked really, really well. And there's also this, which needs a good sharpen. It looks like somebody's chewed the end of it. This is the, and I can never, ever pronounce it, the anthraquinoid pink. Another really, really good Luminance colour. And then you've got the there's the violet grey, which is a really fabulous grey, and of course the ultramarine violet as well, which is gorgeous, and I use that in quite a lot of the fur. Now I use those pencils specifically for the colour rather than the feel of them. I've also got Museum Aquarelle. Now let me bring, oh, here we go. So white pencils, I mean, that's a whole different conversation. White pencils, you've got your white Polychromos, you've got your and you've got your, there's that one, and there's you'll have your Lightfast, and you'll have your white, yeah, and you've got your Luminance. I haven't got the Lightfast one here. Now, if you're anything like me, you will have every single white pencil under the sun that has ever been manufactured, and that is because I think every artist, every colour pencil artist, is on a mission to find the best white pencil they can to get bright white over darker colours. If you're using smooth paper, you are going to really, really struggle to get white, smooth, you know, white over the top of dark colours. It's just not going to happen. You're going to get probably like a bit of a grey, you know, rather than a bright white. If you're using a sanded paper, or if you're using pastel matte, then you are going to be able to get the white over the top. And I have found that the different white pencils do different things, and you'll find that I use the white Pablo all of the time on the darker pastel matte, and I'll use that as an initial layer on any of the animal drawings that I'm doing. So I'll put an initial white layer down. I've found that the Pablo is brilliant for doing that. You can layer over the top of it, so you can layer it, and then you can have the layer shining through the rest of the layers that you put down, or you can go over the top of it and obliterate it. I find that the white Polychromos is quite hard actually to layer over the top of. So I would use a white polychromos to for sort of like if you need to do any burnishing, or you know, like on leather or on eyes or something like that, where you need to do sort of like the final little bits of just tweaking, and you're not going to be layering anything over the top of, then I would use the white polychromos. The white Studio, to be honest, I haven't really used, and I haven't really found a use for it, because my other pencils do the job brilliantly. White Luminance, again, a really fab one for, I think mostly if you're using smooth paper, it's brilliant for just burnishing over the top of other colours, just to smooth everything down and then work back over the top. So the pencil that I have found, which is the best, I would say this is the best white colour pencil, is the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle. And you'll hear me talking about this and using this throughout my tutorials. It is just fantastic. It's a watercolor pencil, but I use it dry, and it gives the brightest white, and it's fantastic for whiskers over the top of dark colors, you know, on pastel matte. It's fantastic for smoothing, you know, over the top of sort of like lighter colors. Is just a fabulous color, a fabulous pencil. And then I've got some of the other aquarelles as well, just a few. They have some really nice colors, and they're just really lovely, highly pigmented pencils, and they're watercolors, so you can use them as watercolors, or you can use them as you know, dry pencils, which I do. And they're black as well. It's got a really rich black. Okay, so let's just have now then, what else am I, erasers. So erasers, and this is my, let's just pop this up there. This is my my putty eraser. This is king, really. in my tools. This grubby little Faber-Castell putty eraser is the most important, apart from my pencils, the most important tool in my kit. It is just, I use it for everything. I use it for getting rid of mistakes. Oh Lord, that's the dog. Poor dog. The dog who snores is not very well at the moment, sadly. He's been diagnosed with doggy dementia, which is quite sad. So he just sort of wanders about aimlessly, bless him. Anyway, back to the putty eraser. So I'll use it for, you know, for taking out any mistakes or anything like that. But to be honest, with pastel matte, I tend to, if I make mistakes, I tend to just incorporate it. Or if I make a massive mistake, I'll take it out with the Scotch tape. And I'll just lay the Scotch tape on and just kind of take out what I need to. The putty eraser is just amazing, especially on white pastel matte, which I do use quite a bit. I use it to help me plot all of my, you know, I'll put layers of pencil down, and then I'll lift out, you know, all of the highlighty areas, so that I've got a really nice feel for where all of my highlights and all that type of stuff go in. I'll use it in white fur to kind of, you know, because you can get a really nice sharp little point there, and I can just sort of lift out little hairs. I use it for blending, you know, just sort of like rub lightly over the top of some of the layers, and it will blend everything. And I'll use it just for sort of like fading off edges of, you know, the edge of a portrait or something like that. This is my absolute necessity. I could not live without one of these. And then, of course, I've got the Scotch Magic tape, which I use a lot on the white paper again. You know, I'll use that for helping to create curls, sticking on, lifting off, that type of thing. The other things that I use a lot of are my wing dividers. So these I use for measuring throughout my portraits. So even though I will use I'm using my projector now, which is amazing, but even though I'm using my projector for, you know, to put my initial outline down, my preference is to freehand. And if you've watched any of my tutorials, you will know that my outlines are really, really, really rubbish. And it's because I just don't like drawing that initial outline bit. I just want to get into the drawing. So I'm just like, shh, and I'm, you know, whacking it all down. And then I come to fill it in and I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, you know, that's the wrong shape, or that's in the wrong place, or that's, you know. So having these is really, really good, because it means that I can measure, you know, off a printout, or I can measure off my screen, or, you know, anything like that. And then I can just make sure that everything's the right size and in the right place in my actual portrait when I come to be working on it. So they're invaluable. And then of course I've got my my slice tool. So this is the manual pen cutter. They do a few different ones. I don't know if I've got any here, but they do a few different ones. I've found that this one is the best. In fact, I've got another one. Oh, I've got this one here as well, which is more like a craft knife, and you can kind of see the difference in the blades. So, oops. This one has got a fatter blade here, and this one's more like your normal sort of scalpel blade. I prefer the rounded one, and I use that, as you know, to help me create fur and all that type of thing. Yeah, it's just a fab tool. You can take off one layer of pencil, you can take off multiple layers of pencils. It doesn't work on every single type of pencil paper. If you have a paper that's got a bit of a coating on it or something like that, you need to test it, because it can take off the top layer and ruin your paper. So I would also always say, you know, test using something like this as much as you can. Okay, so next, what have I got next? So I've got a question from Mary about the Lightfast and the studios and what's the difference. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to get, this is just a sheet of Strathmore. Colour's not that great, is it? But this is just a sheet of the Strathmore Bristol 300 vellum. Use that side, that's fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use okay, let's get two colours that are pretty similar. So I've got a raw sienna. Let's go with the brown. Right, so let's go with two brown ochres. So I've got a brown ochre. Let's just zoom in a little bit there. I've got a brown ochre studio, and I've got a Lightfast brown ochre there. Okay, I'm going to move them because I think they might be affecting the light a little bit. Right, okay, so I'm just going to show you, hopefully, a little bit of what the difference is between them. So the Derwent Studio, I'll just put this down. So I'm using, you know, pretty not the lightest of pressure, but you know, medium sort of pressure. So I'm just putting that down there, and you can kind of see that, not particularly brilliantly, but you can kind of see that. Okay, so that's the Derwent Studio, and then this is the Lightfast. Okay, so I'm using the same pressure, and you can see straight away you get, it's almost like with the Lightfast, it's like you've got a fountain pen that's flooded, and you get the pigment that comes out of it is just amazing. So you've got the Studio there, which again, so if I press a little bit harder, so that's the Studio one. So I'm using really quite hard pressure there. And then if I use quite hard pressure with the Lightfast, you just get a much, I'm not actually pressing as hard as I was with the Studio, but you get a much thicker pigment coming out of there. And this is really why, and this is I think this is what people get frustrated with when they're using pastel mat. Not that this is pastel mat, but you'll put a really light layer down on the pastel mat and it's really, really grainy. So then what happens is your instinct is to go in really hard and increase your pressure. And then the graininess kind of doesn't go away, but then what happens is you almost lose the ability to be able to layer on the top. And then when you do start layering on the top, then it starts to go all muddy. So it's really, really frustrating. So that's why I would recommend, you know, the lightest of layers initially, just to get that sort of, you know, your blocking your colors in. But you can kind of see the difference between the Lightfast and the Studio there. The Studio is much more muted. It's a wax based rather than oil based. On a smooth paper, if you were going to combine the Derwents, the Studios with the Polychromos, you would need to put your Studios down first and then put your Polychromos on the top. You'll find it really hard to get your Studios over the top of your Polychromos on a smooth paper. On the pastel mat, they work fine. But that's kind of the difference. And it depends really on whether you like a hard pencil or whether you like a soft pencil. You know, that is a real, that's just a personal preference, basically. Yeah, so those are the pencils. And right, okay, so we're just going to come on to paper now. We're going to look at the different coloured pastel mat. So just change my. So I've got some different colours here. So you know that when I'm working, I use white pastel mat and I use dark grey pastel mat. And pastel mat comes in an array of different colours. So we've got here, this is sort of like a wine, although it looks blue. I think it's probably because it's got the shiny bit on it. Let's see if I can just take this off a little bit and then see if you can see. No, so this is looking like purple, but it's not. It's like a wine color, and that's just my video color. Anyway, so we've got wine. We've got sort of like a goldy, yellowy color. We've got the light bluey grey. Like an orangey, I think they call it sienna, and then there's like a maize colour in here as well. Let's just pull this up slightly. And then you've got the anthracite, which is the dark grey, the really dark grey. You've got the dark grey, you've got the white, you've got the light grey, and then you've got some greens as well. So basically, there's a question here. I've got the hardest time deciding what colour pastel mat to use for my drawings. How can I decide, and what do you look for to decide? So when I first started out, I was buying the pads of pastel mat, and I'd use the pages as they came. So you know, I'd look at I did some yellow Labradors on sort of like a pale. Sort of this colour pastel mat, this sort of pale beigey colour. I would use the anthracite quite a bit, the really, really dark grey. I use the dark brown quite a lot. And how I chose the different colours, basically I would look at my midtones. So I would look at an animal. So say you have a German Shepherd, for example. And it's more of a sort of a reddy, tanny coloured German Shepherd rather than the really dark colours or the really light colour that you can get. So the midtones there are going to be more browny, and I would choose a pastel mat paper to kind of aid me in those midtones. So it's almost like I was halfway through, or it was giving me a helping hand, if you like. So I would I'd choose either the dark brown, or I might choose something like the sienna, the reddy brown, which would be quite nice, which might match some of the midtones. Or if I wanted it to really pop, and I wanted to put some really lovely, or I wanted to look really nice bright colours, I might use the anthracite. It depends on my vision for the piece and what I'm looking for, and it also depends on what colours are in the dog. And this is where I think I'm a little bit different to quite a few other artists, in the fact that if I'm drawing a pale coloured dog or a white dog, I'm going to go with white paper, because the way that I draw and the way that I want my pieces to come out, I want subtlety and softness. If I was drawing a white dog on, say, something dark like this, yes, it's going to pop, and yes, it's going to look, it's going to look terrific, and people are going to go, wow, that looks just, but what I'm going to struggle with is getting the softness and the subtlety, because to get the white on the paper, I am going to have to put so many layers down, which means that I lose that lovely soft quality that I'm aiming for, because I have to put loads and loads and loads of layers down. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to lose that subtlety. I don't want my pieces to look, not as subtle as I want them to. So the other way to get around that is to not put as many layers down. But then my frustration is that I don't want to see the tooth coming through, if I can possibly help it, unless it's going to aid what it is that I'm doing. So I can appreciate and I love other people's art where they just put sort of a few layers down and you can still see the tooth coming through, and that's fine, but that's not my style, and that's why I choose the white over the darker colours for my pale animals. And anything that's got a lot of white on it, I will choose white, just because it means that I can keep that lovely subtlety. The dark grey, so I only use the two colours now, the dark grey and the white, and the dark grey is fantastic for darker animals. It works very differently than the white paper, so I tend to use polychromos quite a lot on the dark grey, and it just means that I can I can just get a really nice sort of subtle, I can still get a nice subtle feel to it, but it's and I mean, I probably should try using some of the other colours, so that's maybe something that I should start to try and do, actually. I'm just sending a text to my son telling him I'm doing a live stream and not to walk in and start shouting. as he's wont to do. But yes, I probably should start using some of these other colours, because I think it's quite good to have variety in your work. And now that I've got, I mean, Claire Fontaine has sent me, a range of all of the Pastelmat colours, so that would be quite good. But yeah, that's what I would do. I would look at the animal that you're going to create. I would look at the midtones, and I would go, what paper is going to help me the most? That's what I would do. And then again with the Pastelmat, Catherine has asked, would Pastelmat work for skin tones, or would it be too difficult to have a smooth skin with the texture? Now, I have seen some absolutely stunningly beautiful portraits done on Pastelmat, but they've been done in a really beautiful light muted way, and you've actually got the grain of the paper coming through, and they are just incredible. Have a look at David Sandell, Sandell, I think. He's a UK artist. His work is sublime. You'll look at it and you'll just die. It's absolutely amazing. He uses Pastelmat. He does a lot of oil paintings as well, but he uses Pastelmat, and I can't describe how beautiful it is. It's absolutely beautiful. So go and have a look at his work. So I would say yes, for skin tones, yes, it does work, but it depends on the style and how you want your piece to end up. Right, so let's have a think. Initial line drawings. So that's an interesting one. A lot of people use this for putting their initial line drawing down on their on the pastel mat or whatever paper they're wanting to use. This is Tracedown, and it's the graphite transfer paper. If you've listened to any of my tutorials, you'll hear me moaning on about how grim it is and how dirty it is. It's brilliant. It is brilliant because you can use it to quickly get your image down on the paper, but it is quite dirty, and you can get marks. And on if it's on a smooth paper, the marks come off really quite easily. If it's on the pastel mat, then the marks aren't. You can struggle to get the marks off, to be honest. It's not the nicest of experiences, but it works. It works. Basically, you put your image over the top of your paper, you slip your transfer paper in between, and off you go and trace around, and you get your image there. That's fine. So what the question is, never used an initial line drawing before getting coloured pencils, so my question is about how to make a good one. I find that I don't have much trouble determining where to put lines for the highlights, but do with separating the more subtle hues. Can you show how you make yours, or if there is enough interest, maybe have a focus video in the future? Okay, so I know I've done a video on creating the line art using the Tracedown. But this question isn't specifically about how do I get my line art down. This question is determining where the lines for the highlights are, and how do you kind of separate out the more subtle hues. So let's just have a look at photo up. I can just quickly look at this. Okay, so let's have a look at. So if we look at this little spaniel that I was working on before, so she was part of a portrait that I did before. Okay, so if I was working on this and I was going to create a line drawing with this, I would, in fact, let's do it. Let's do it on this paper, this dead quickly. And this is on the Strathmore. Get this out. Vile, horrible stuff. Right. Oops. Okay. So I'm going to lay the dark side down. I'm going to find my stylus, which has gone walkabout. There we are. Okay, and I'm going to just put this little doggy down on here, and I am just going to start tracing round. So she's having trouble determining where to put the lines for the, oh no, she doesn't have trouble to the lines for the highlights, but separating the more subtle hues. Now, I don't separate the subtle hues. What I would do is I would do an initial outline. So I'd do this, I'd go around the top of the head, blah, blah, blah. I'd put in the sort of like the bits that are going to help me determine where all of these areas are. So I put the eyes in, and I'm rubbish, and I always just rush and what have you. And I really don't go to town at all with where I'm putting my marks. But what I'll do is I'll include shapes that are going to aid me. I mean, this is really, really quick. So get the nose in there. You wait, I'll move this and then it won't have come up. But can you see how here where we've got differences, you've got this really light bit here and you've got this sort of darker area here. I might put a bit of an indication in here, but and maybe here where the edge of the eye is. But what I'm not going to do is put sort of all of these bits in. I just don't do that. Let's just have a look and see what we end up with. Okay, so that's basically what we end up with. You see that? Maybe not, kind of. I just go with a really basic outline, and then when I come to fill it in, if you like, that's kind of all done freehand. That's my preference. However, if you want to put in every single bit of detail in here, if you want to add in these little bits, then do it. The other thing that you could do, actually, which oh gosh, I can't remember who it was now that did it, but what they did when they drew their outline was they actually it put in sort of like a code into each bit. So this is dark, so they put like a D and a D, and they put sort of like mid-tone or light, or that type of thing, just so that they could kind of work out where all the bits are. It doesn't really matter what you do, as long as you can cover it up or you can rub it out. It doesn't really matter what you do at all, and it doesn't matter how much detail you put in. It's for you to decide and for you to work out what's easiest for you, basically. For me, I get really, really confused when there's lots of like different lines and everything everywhere. And sometimes I think, oh, I'll put loads of detail in, it'll make it easier for me. And then I just end up going mad because I can't figure out what the lines are. So I end up rubbing them all out and not using them anyway. So for me, it's I tend to go with a very basic outline. But I've seen other people where they have put every single tiny little bit of detail in, because that's what works for them. And if it works for you, it works for you, and that's what I would do. So I now use my projector, which is, I have to say, absolutely fantastic, and I love it. Yeah, so that's what I use. I know it's expensive, but it's definitely worth its weight in gold for me. It's just brilliant, and I can set it up behind me, and it shines down onto my drawing board. And again, I don't go into masses of detail. I just do sort of like a rough outline. But it means I don't have to print off a piece of, I don't have to print out. I don't have a printer at home, and I use somebody in the local town, so I have to email it to them. They have to print it out. So it's much easier for me. Yeah, so that's with your line drawings. It's personal. You do what you want to do, and you put as much detail in as you want. So yes, right, okay, so let's have another look. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left, and I haven't got through hardly any of these at all, and I've got some videos that I wanted to show you, which I can either post up on Patreon, or I can use for the next time round. Next time round, hopefully you'll get to see my face as well. I don't really like showing my face on a video, but I'm hoping to set up my camera so that I've got one camera so you can see me talking, which will be a really fabulous experience for you all. Or you can, and then you'll have my hands as well. For individuals looking into creating pet portraits and tutorials like I do, what does a day in my life look like? Well, I would say if anybody is thinking of doing pet portraits and maybe taking it into the teaching side and all that type of stuff as well, I would say go for it. Just go for it. And if you want any help and if you want any advice, just ask, and I will tell you warts and all, whatever you want to know. I am not an artist who holds back on anything. But I won't tell you a few things and keep a few things to myself. I will let you have everything. Anything you want to know, I will let you know. So my day consists of, and funnily enough, actually, I've just been watching the lovely, it made me laugh because I was thinking, oh, I should do one of those, Bethany Vere, who has all of a sudden started to do a lot of YouTube videos and that type of thing, which I think is just brilliant. But she's done a day in her life today, and it starts off with her getting out of bed and stretching, and and she's a very beautiful young lady. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, oh gosh, if I did that, you'd all just run away screaming. So I'm thinking I might have to do like a spoof video or something like that. And then at the end she did some lovely yoga and stretching and everything, and I was like, oh my goodness, no, that's not what my day looks like at all. So my day starts at 6:45. My alarm goes off, and I do admit I hit snooze a couple of times. So it's normally about 7 o'clock when I pick up my phone, which is next to me on my bedside table, and I start answering messages and questions. And I usually answer messages and questions for about an hour to about 8 o'clock. And I do get a lot of messages and questions. I get a lot through Instagram, and I get a lot, if people have sort of tagged me or something in Facebook or something like that. I do get a lot of questions. So that's what I'll do. So for an hour, I will lie in bed and I'll answer, and I'll do a bit of social media and that type of thing, thanking people if they've liked my work, or answering questions. 8 o'clock, I get up and I walk my dogs. And we're out for about 40 minutes usually, and then I either come home, I'll come home and I'll kind of have a bit of a tidy up, get some breakfast, cup of tea, and I will sit for an hour and watch an episode of whatever box set I'm watching at the moment. And that takes me to around 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, I then start my work. And my work might comprise of just working on a portrait, or it might be that I have to do some editing, or I might have to answer some emails, or I might have to do some admin, or something like that. Tend to end up doing sort of half a day of admin-y type stuff, and then it's rare actually at the moment that I draw every hour of my working day. I do tend to do quite a lot of the admin side of things, and then so then I'll start working on whatever portrait I'm doing, and I'll work through up until about 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock is when the children come home from school. So my daughter, she usually brings my son home, and then I walk the dogs again. And then we have tea and family stuff. And then usually by 7 o'clock in the evening, I'm back in my studio and I'm back working on portraits. I don't tend to do any admin at that time of night. It tends to be just sort of like drawing and working on the whichever portrait I'm working on. In the meantime, I'm still working on, I'm always dipping in and out of social media. What I tend to do, especially with Instagram, is if I'm working on a portrait and I find something that I think somebody will find really interesting, then I will take a little video and pop that up on Instagram, or take a whip and photograph of whatever I'm working on, post that on Instagram, giving some sort of like little information about it, so that might help some people. And that's basically what you know, my day looks like. Some days I might go to the framers. I've got a video to put together actually for you for my framers. So I'll spend maybe an hour with my framer discussing different frame options, prices, that type of thing. I might have to go and do some photography somewhere, or I might have to go to the printers and pick up some prints or drop something off to be scanned. But generally my day consists of sort of like maybe 2 hours of admin in the morning. And then the rest of the day will be drawing and dipping in and out of social media, you know. So, but honestly, I would say if somebody's thinking about teaching, or they're wanting to do tutorials, or they're wanting to start a YouTube channel, or whatever, or they want to take they want to start like a portrait business or whatever. I'm really, really happy to help. So just ask. Anyway, so I haven't got through half of the questions I wanted to, because I think I just ended up waffling, which I'm kind of want to do. So I'm going to move the rest of the questions, and there are quite a few, over onto next month's. I've got some videos and everything, and I'll try and get this format so that you can actually see my face rather than my hands doing all of this sort of stuff. And yeah, thank you for joining me. And hopefully this has worked. If it hasn't, I'll be really, really sad. But I think it has. I think you will hopefully be able to hear me, and hopefully, I've answered some of your questions. So, yes, thank you all very much.